And it is a tribute to our speaker today, as I know many of you are here because of his reputation and connections with him. And for those of you who don't know John Beckett well, I want to give a brief introduction. John grew up in Elyria. He worked in the aerospace industry after graduating from MIT. And then he returned to the Elyria area to work with the family company, where he has been since 1963. John dealt with some adversity in that his father died shortly after he moved back to learn the business from his dad, and he became in charge of the business much earlier without as much grounding in it as he had hoped for. But that's one of the many challenges that John has taken on and thrived at throughout his life. He is seen as a worldwide leader in the manufacture and sale of engineered components for residential and commercial heating. The company processes about $100 million and 600 employees. He has operations here and in Ontario, Canada. Actually, his Canadian operation is in Guelph, where I went to university. His wife is from Canada, and I am too. So lots of cross-border things here. Mr. Beckett has been very active in church and community. He has sat on diverse boards of directors in the for-profit industry, small and large companies, and in the nonprofit industry, small and large organizations. He's a board member at King's College in New York City, and he currently serves on the board of Campus Crusades for Christ International. John is the author of 2 books, Loving Monday and Mastering Monday, and as long as you put a card in the door prize draw, you will have a chance at winning one of these today. He has also been recognized as Christian Businessman of the Year by the Christian Broadcasting Network and as Manufacturing Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. And John and his wife Wendy still live in Elyria. They have 6 children, one of which, Jonathan, is here today, and they have 16 grandchildren. So please welcome John Beckett.
Well, you know a little bit about me, now I need to know a little bit about you. How many of you are currently serving on at least one board? Just about everybody there. How many of you wish you weren't? No, I'm just and just to feel, anybody serving on 3 or more boards? 5 or more boards? No. Well, you're deep into it, and obviously you're here because you have an interest in this topic. My father-in-law, Kathy, also Canadian, actually headed a seminary in Toronto, and when he would visit with us, he would wax eloquent about some of the politics of being in the theological seminary. But I remember one comment that he made, just thinking about his own board involvements. He said, "I wish I had all the hours back that I wasted in board meetings." And that registered with me, not that it has kept me from being on boards, but it's made me more cautious about the number of boards and the type of boards that I serve on. I did a little inventory in preparation for today, and I was at 25 boards that I have served on, and I was still counting, so that's probably a good place to stop. That's enough boards for a lifetime. I'm currently at 7, and they range all over the map. Kathy gave you a few of the ones that I'm currently on, but they've been in the corporate sector, both public and private. A lot of them have been in the nonprofit sector, ranging all the way from a small retail activity with 2 employees to an organization that I'm involved with now that has 25,000 people in over 190 countries around the world. The public company that I was a board member on until just a few years ago did, I think, 14 mergers and acquisitions during the time that I was there, and a few divestitures too. And I was there in the pre-Enron and the post-Enron period, saw the effects of Sarbanes-Oxley, where we were spending over $2 million a year in compliance alone. And and yet these were very instructive experiences. By the way, there are a couple kinds of boards that I have determined to never serve on if I can possibly avoid it. One is a country club, and the other is a homeowners association. Because what happens in these boards is that otherwise sane, capable people get together and they strain at gnats, and it can be an exercise in frustration. Well, my purpose today is to just share some experiences, what some of the best boards have in common, and also the boards that have been least productive in my experience. I'd like to recommend some best practices, things that have helped make the boards I've been involved in more effective. I want to make some observations about board members, what makes a board member a good board member, and then I'd like to make just a few comments about the most important functions of boards, and then also the most important ways in which staff can support board activity. So it's kind of a large agenda, but I'm going to move through it quickly because I really would like to steer our time toward an ample opportunity for Q&A and discussion, and we would like this to be a practical and helpful time for everybody. In fact, you may want to make a few notes as we're going through, but one thing that you may want to jot down would be something that's a new insight for you, something that's a different way of looking at board activity than you had, and we may just have a few minutes to share that at the end. Now, there's no shortage of wit about board activity, and if you doubt that, all you have to do is go on the internet. Here's just a few ways in which wit suggested that a person manage their board, and this is probably directed at maybe the CEO. The first is to meet by phone whenever possible, because most of the board members will be doing their email or something that they're not paying attention to at all, but they'll just go when you ask them to. Yeah, just conduct your board meetings by phone. This is obviously tongue-in-cheek, right? I debated whether I would share this story because it's a little bit embarrassing, but when I was on the public company board, we had it was actually an in-person board meeting, but I wasn't there, I was in Belgium. And this was going to be a long board meeting, which I knew I would be mostly listening for. And being a type A person, I just was saying, how am I going to get through this 6-hour board meeting, just sitting there in a room in Belgium. And the home that I was staying at, home of a friend, had a living room that needed painting. And about an hour before the board meeting, I got the bright idea that while I'm attending this board meeting, I could paint this room. And so we scurried out, we bought paint, brushes, rollers, everything. And I realized they didn't have a speakerphone, so we bought a speakerphone. And got the whole thing set up. We literally had everything ready to go about 1 minute before the board meeting was going to begin, and I would dial in. And I realized I didn't know how to put the speakerphone on mute. And so for the next 6 hours, if you can picture this, I'm painting the walls of this room, listening to all of the pontificating around the boardroom, and hoping, beyond hope, that I don't trip over the ladder or dump something. And everybody in the house had to be quiet as a mouse. They still tell the story about how a corporate board paid to have their living room painted in Brussels colors. Now, if you do have to meet in person, it's going to happen sometime, use food. Any discussion you don't want input on should be right after lunch. Nobody's going to be awake then. Do bring up board comp and director liability insurance matters. It's sure to get their attention and won't interfere with the real business of the company. If they've got to discuss something, get them down into the weeds. Color of the office, words for the new ad campaign, what bank to deposit tax payments in. That keeps everybody out of trouble. And then finally, if you're public and their questions are going where you don't want them to, tell them that you're glad to answer, but that will make them insiders for the next 2 years. You can also tell by who squirms who is planning to sell. Well, we'll board with. Here are some attributes of the best boards that I have served on. The members of the board view it as an important responsibility. And they're there to serve. We use this expression, serving on a board. But not everybody comes with the attitude of wanting to serve. They come because it's an ego trip or it's prestigious or they want to make themselves heard or other things. But the best board members really have an appreciation for the importance of what they're doing. And frankly, if a board role is not important, don't do it. Leave the space open for somebody who really wants to do it. But leave your personal agenda aside. I think the best board members, and this is not always possible, but the best board members come with some previous board experience. It's not a bad question to ask when you're recruiting board people, what boards have you served on? Because there's an expertise that comes from being in a board environment. If you're awake at all, you learn from other people how they contribute, what strengths, what weaknesses they have, and so board history is good. And I also encourage drawing people in from different backgrounds. You don't want a monolithic board where everyone comes from a similar background and perspective. It's that rubbing together of different viewpoints that can often bring out the best decisions. Now, having said that, you're obviously looking for people who will flow well together, respect one another, and be supportive of one another. You don't want a cantankerous board. A good board has a chair, and the chairman's role is very important, by the way. The best boards have chairs who really encourage participation. And that may be pretty obvious, but you see situations where the chair wants to dominate all of the flow of the activity. He's basically looking for people to rubber stamp his or her plan. And that's not a board that you want to serve on. You want somebody who has a chairman who just wants to draw out the thinking and the comment of other board members. And the right dynamics in the board meeting can really encourage that. A good board will have very strong staff support and preparation. You're going to be hearing me a few times at least today talk about the importance of preparation, both on the part of the board members but also the staff. A good board meeting really happens before the board meeting ever begins. It happens in the preparation of the materials the staff prepares and puts in the hands of the board members soon enough before the board meeting that they can really digest it and process it. And we can go into more about what that preparation should look like, but the important point to register is that that preparation is essential, and then the board person himself or herself needs to spend the time to digest what's in there, so that we're going to that board meeting equipped and prepared. We're not going to hear the kinds of reports that could so easily be put in people's hands ahead of time. We're there to do higher level stuff when we get to the board meeting. And just a final comment on what good boards have in common. In my experience, they're not large. I have kind of a sweet spot. I was talking with somebody at the table about how good a board is if it's 9 people or so. It doesn't have to be that big. It can be, I've been on boards of 5 people that are very effective, or 7 people. But there's an issue when the board becomes too large, and it's an obvious one. There's only so much time to weigh in and participate as the board gets larger. That's just not possible. One of the first things I'll look at if I'm asked to serve on the board is its size. And I was asked to serve on the board of a very prestigious university. And when I saw that they had 32 board members, that was enough. I just said, that's not the kind of board that I want to serve on. Now, having said that, these large boards, if they're going to be effective at all, will break it down into a lot of smaller unit subcommittees and so forth. And you can get some stuff done there, but don't plan on getting much done in the large company board. The public company board that I was on was a great board, and it was 9 people until we made an acquisition with another company that brought in some private equity folks, and they wanted board representation. The private equity folks were a little bit like Bain company that we're seeing so much in the political dialogue right now. But they wanted people involved in the board, and the board went from 9 to 13. And I cannot tell you how dramatically that shifted the dynamic of that board meeting. Because everybody wanted their say, and so you could be there for, typically these were 1.5-day long board meetings, but hardly had a chance to weigh in at all, because it was just so it really impacted me that there was a tipping point there where a board just became too large. Well, the least productive boards are really almost a mirror image of some of the things that I've mentioned. If you have a board where somebody is not there to serve the organization but to serve themselves, it can get ugly. My wife was part of an international board that had a German board member, nothing against the Germans, but he was there with his own agenda. And it was such a